And continuing on again. The Burr Oak Hotel was a bustling place with people coming and going, and covered wagons parked in the yard each night. When they were not in school, Laura and Mary helped in the kitchen and washed piles of dishes. Laura also took the cow to the pasture in the morning and brought her back home at night. And often she ran errands for the hotel's guests. One day, when Laura returned home, she found she had a brand new baby sister. Pa and Ma named the baby Grace.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah. Laura and her family were busy in Burr Oak, but they all missed the prairie country. So after 2 years, they left Burr Oak and returned to Walnut Grove. Then Pa traveled far away by covered wagon to begin a job as storekeeper for the new railroad line that was being built to link Minnesota and Dakota territory. Ma and the girls followed Pa by train.
Oh, that's rather fancy.
Yeah, Laura was now 12, and she had a special duty. During a long sickness, Mary had become blind.
Oh no.
And Pa asked Laura to become Mary's eyes.
Oh boy, that would be a very big job.
Yes, sir. So all the way to Dakota territory, Laura told Mary about the train's smoking engine and about the people who sat on the plush red velvet seats in the train car. When the family was settled in the railroad camp, Laura told Mary about the railroad men and their strong horses, busily working to build the track across the rolling prairie. During their first winter in Dakota territory, Laura's family had almost no neighbors. But in the spring, farmers crowded onto the land, and the town of D. Smith sprang up overnight. Laura and Pa missed the empty prairie, but the Ingalls family would move no more. Pa had promised Ma that they would stay in D. Smith so the girls could go to school. summer, the family lived on their homestead, but in the winter they lived in town so Laura and Carrie could walk to school. At night, Laura repeated her lessons to Mary so Mary could keep up with her studies too. Mary wanted to go to the college for the blind in Iowa, and Laura wanted to help her in any way she could.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. The winters in Dakota Territory were fierce, and sometimes Laura and Carrie could not walk to the schoolhouse because of the snow. One winter, the blizzards were so severe that the train stopped running.
Oh, boy.
And the stores ran out of food and fuel. For months, Laura's family huddled together in their town building. Laura twisted hay to burn and ground wheat for flour until her hands ached. Everyone might have starved, but two boys, Almanzo Wilder and Cap Garland, made a dangerous trip across the frozen prairie to bring food back to the hungry townspeople.
That was brave of them.
Yeah. When Laura was 15, she became a teacher in a tiny school 12 miles from DeSmit. There were just 5 students, and 2 were almost Laura's age, but Laura was a good teacher. She lived with a family near the school and was very lonely for Pa and Ma and her sisters. She did not expect to see her family for the 2 months she would be teaching. But as her first week of teaching ended, Almanzo Wilder came with his sly and fast horses to take Laura home. Each Friday, Almanzo drove Laura home, and each Sunday he brought her back to school. Laura loved skipping across snowy prairie behind Almanzo's beautiful brown horses. And when school ended, she had earned $40 to help pay Mary's expenses at the college for the blind. When Laura returned to DeSmit, Almanzo still took her on sleigh rides. And in the spring, he took her for rides in his shiny black buggy. They rode to singing school to church parties, to ice cream socials, and to see Elmo&Donald's homestead clean. They went to the nearby lakes, where they picked prairie roses and wild grapes. Picked prairie roses and wild grapes, and listened to the waves lapping against the shore. On one of their rides, Elmo asked Laura to marry him, and she said yes.
Okay.
In 1885, when Laura was 18, she and Elmo were married and went to live in their own little gray house on the prairie.
Out here. That's nice.
Yeah, Laura was no longer a prairie girl or a pioneer girl. She was now a homesteader's wife, and she soon learned to cook and bake and clean as well as Ma. But Laura still loved to be outdoors on the prairie. She and Elmo galloped across the prairie on their horses to visit Pa and Ma.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yep. Or to watch a glorious sunset. On the second winter, they were married. Laura and Elmo had their own daughter. They named her Rose for those sweet-smelling blossoms that covered the prairies in summer. After Rose was born, sad times came to the Wilders. First, the crops dried up in the hot weather. Then Elmo and Laura became ill. After they recovered, Elmo could not use his right leg very well. For worse, Laura and Elmo's second child, a boy, died soon after he was born.
Oh, boy. That's horrible.
Yeah. Then one terrible day, the little gray house burned down. These were unhappy days for Laura, but she was a pioneer and she knew she was tougher than hard times. Hoping to make a fresh start, Laura, Elmo, and Rose left the prairie and traveled south by train to Florida. They thought that the warmer weather would make Elmo stronger. But the scrubby pine trees, sandy soil, and hot summer made the Wilders homesick. They returned to DeSmit, still planning to start a new farm and build another home someday. Laura sold for $1 a day, and Elmo worked at any job he could. Rose was now 5, and she began school. One day a friend gave Laura the biggest, reddest apple she had ever seen. It came from Missouri, the land of the big red apple. Laura and Almanzo learned that there was rich farmland for sale in Missouri. In 1894, they decided to move to Missouri and buy a farm. With the $100 that Laura had been able to save from her sewing job, just as Ma and Pa had done, Laura and Almanzo packed up all their belongings in a covered wagon to move to a new land. Laura kept a diary of the 45 days it took of the family to travel from DeSmet to Missouri. She wrote of the hot, dusty miles, the water-stuffed prairie, farms they passed, and finally of Missouri's rolling green hills, apple orchards, and rushing creeks. As they drove into a town in the Ozark Mountains called Mansfield, Laura told Almanzo and Rose, "This is where we stop." They bought a hilly, tree-covered farm a mile from Mansfield, and Laura named it Rocky Ridge Farm. The Wilders moved into a tiny one-room log cabin that stood under tall trees and reminded Laura of her first home in the big woods of Wisconsin. With Rose's help, Laura cleaned the cabin and made it cozy for the coming winter, while Almanzo began clearing the land. The Wilders were finally home.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Laura and Almanzo worked together to make their new land a farm. They cut down trees, cleared away stones, and planted an apple orchard. While waiting for the land to grow good crops, Laura, Almanzo, and Rose moved to the town of Mansfield. Their house was close to Mansfield First School, and Rose quickly became one of the school's best readers, spellers, and writers, as Laura had always been. To earn money, Almanzo delivered oil and stove gas in a horse-drawn delivery wagon, and Laura cooked meals for railroad workers. Laura soon became known in Mansfield as a good cook, a hard worker and a cheerful neighbor. She shared with the community Sorry, lost my place again.
It's alright.
Okay, she shared with the community her good ideas, such as holding the town's first church bazaar. Mansfield people were glad that the Wilder family had come to their town. Before they moved back to Rocky Ridge Farm, Laura and Armando built a new house on their land, using their own trees for lumber. When the house was finished, it had 10 rooms, 3 porches, and 30 windows.
Wow.
When she cooked or sewed or worked inside, Laura could look out on the trees and curving hills of Rocky Ridge Farm. Even as an adult, Laura liked to be outside as much as she had when she was a pioneer girl. She waded in the creek, ran races up the hills with Rose, and hunted for berries in the woods. She tamed wild birds and small animals and had picnics with friends. In the evenings, Laura and Manja and Rose sat around the fireplace eating popcorn and apples, while Laura read aloud. She read books, newspapers, magazines, and letters from the family in DeSmit. In these letters, Laura learned that Mary, who had graduated from the College for the Blind, was living with Ma and Pa and helping with work at home and at church. Carrie was working at the DeSmit newspaper office, and Grace had married a farmer who lived nearby. One day, a letter came saying that Pa was very sick. Laura immediately traveled back to DeSmit by train and was with him when he died.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Pa's pioneer spirit lived on in Laura and in Rose too. Both Laura and Rose loved to travel to new places, and both of them were good storytellers.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep. When Rose graduated from school, she became a journalist and traveled all over the world. She wrote books and stories about the places she visited. and she often sent home long letters about her adventures. Laura and Orlando were proud that their Rose had become a famous writer. In 1915, when Laura was 48 years old, she made her farthest trip west. She traveled to San Francisco, where Rose was living, to visit her daughter and see a World's Fair. Orlando stayed home to tend the farm, but Laura wrote him letters about the wonders she and Rose saw, like the Pacific Ocean and the giant redwood trees and the